Wow, that is like a really fun like house music intro. Big shout out to Evan for putting that together for us. But man, I feel like there's like more pressure now after countdown, Cece. Like I
Your
was
walk-up music is like set the stage. We're here.
we're here. And the other thing that Evan does is starts like right on time. So if you're anything like me, probably you're just joining now and you didn't see the awesome countdown. But we're going to get started because we are respectful of your time. It is the top of the hour. We are so excited to share a little bit of preview with you, some of the awesome content that we have co-published together from Level Agency and Chili Piper. We published an ultimate guide to B2B demand generation, and we've excerpted some of the most exciting ideas, concepts, sort of the TLDR from that. And we're going to spend the next, 35, 40 minutes unpacking it. And hopefully we'll get some really good questions, comments, throw them in the chat. We'll answer them as they come through if they're relevant to the flow. Otherwise, we'll make some space at the end as well. But we love to see that engagement. So feel free to please do that as we go. I'm in Washington, D.C. for a conference. So I don't have my usual two screens, which means that Evan is the man behind the curtain. I'm driving the deck. So if you hear me say things like, Evan, next slide, we'll get those in post. Just ignore them. But Evan, next slide. So what are we going to talk about today? We'll start with an introduction so you know who these two people are. We'll talk about what's broken in B2B demand generation today. So we'll talk a little bit about sort of the core problem as we see it. We'll take a minute to talk about an old idea, speed to lead, and why it still matters and why it matters more than ever based on some of the broken things that we'll talk about before that. We'll take a minute and talk about funnel dynamics and how they're changing and how B2B consumer behavior is changing the funnel. And then, of course, it would not be a webinar without a AI feature section. A lot of the topics that we're gonna talk about have AI, automation, machine learning components to them, but we'll actually deep dive into some of the more advanced applications of using AI to solve some funnel bottlenecks. And then we will end with our bold predictions and a chance for some Q&A. Let's get going. So Cece, maybe you can kick us off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you get excited about.
Oh, man. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I know making space for a chunk of time like this is an investment. So whether you're here live or catching us on the recording, many thanks for taking a peek. This is something that I get giddy about in the weirdest way possible. So I'm based in North Carolina by way of Montana, coincidentally. So my roots are in Montana, but the cold just doesn't do it for me. And in Montana, I actually have a background before tech in hospitality. So I ran a full service hotel, catering and convention center, and I have just always been rooted in and grounded by the philosophy that hospitality really is at the core of absolutely everything we do. And as I have sat in my seat advising on and helping some of the premier kind of GTM teams across the enterprise space as an account manager here at Chili Piper over the last 6 years, it's been so fun to see those two kind of weird loves of mine, hospitality and tech, really intersect in what becomes the digital experience that these B2B companies are trying to bring to market. So I get excited when people are thinking about the experience they're delivering through the technology that they ultimately bring on board to support that. And I know, Level, you guys focus tremendously on what that digital experience is. So I'm super excited for the chance to chat today about what we're seeing in trends and my view through that lens of hospitality.
I love that, Cece. And shout out to a book called Radical Hospitality, which is a great read if you're interested in more connections between that hospitality approach and what it means in the larger business context. But we're so excited to have some of your perspective. Cece mentioned, she has been a enterprise strategist with some of the biggest clients in the space, doing some of the most cool stuff in digital demand generation. So excited to hear more about that. I'm Pat Van Gorder. I am president, head of growth at Level Agency, co-founded the agency back in 2010, which is a lifetime ago. And we have been focused on performance marketing and demand generation in complex environments, including B2B, since the very beginning. And, I think Cece stole a little bit of my thunder just on the experience perspective, like, what we know about, more high touch, considered purchase, long sales cycle, complex buyer group buyers is every interaction matters. And if you are not thinking about each of those interactions as a way to build trust, credibility, brand dynamics, you are missing the boat. And that's what we're going to talk to you about today. All right, next slide, Evan. So the volume trap and pipeline disconnect is sort of the way that I'm encouraging you to think about what's happening in the marketing space right now as it relates to B2B demand generation. So you have a generation of marketers that has been incentivized, focused, committed to lead generation. But more and more, the sales team getting very vocal and saying, we don't care about the leads. We don't want just the lead counts. We want the real opportunities that convert to real deals. And we can understand that conceptually as a process thing and how we interact with, how marketing and sales interact. But what people don't know is that in many cases, our systems are set up in such a way that they are actually deepening this problem. And if you're doing some of the things that we talk about in this report, as far as like optimizing towards lead conversions rather than qualified deals or opportunities, you're actually reinforcing this cycle of lead volume goes up, lead quality goes down, experience degrades. Nobody believes that marketing is driving the right types of leads for the business, and it turns into this really, really vicious cycle. And it all starts with sort of building from a foundation of volume instead of building from a foundation of quality. And if you go to the next slide. There's actually, some interesting shout out to some other great primary work that's happening out there. So this is a report from WARC, WARC. It's called the multiplier effect. So highly recommend for anyone. What they're talking a lot about, what they've highlighted is this sort of comes from this fundamental misunderstanding about what performance marketing is in B2B, and ultimately, what's happening is because we are incentivizing both marketing teams and algorithms based on just pure volume, we're pulling so much activity out of market experiences, people that are not actually actively trying to buy, that we're bringing people forward pretty effectively, but they're not in market, and we're treating them like they're in market. And what this effectively is doing is it's degrading the performance of the entire funnel, because yes, we are generating more leads. We're using, demand gen ad formats or whatever tools we're using to get more leads, but we don't realize that it's not the same type of person. Only 5%, 5 to 10% of your buyers are in market at any time. We need to really, really focus on those audiences for our performance marketing. The rest of your audience is out of market, right? They are potentially your ICP. They fit perfectly. They align with your GTM. There's some great content in the Ultimate Guide about making sure that stays true. But they're not trying to buy right now. We need to have different strategies for those different audiences. A couple data points. I love sprinkling. You'll see some takeaway data points here that you can write down and take away as your key learnings from this. WordStream said about a 13.5% decrease in conversion rate for a handful of B2B categories that we looked at. And then this work report that I referenced, 40% median ROAS decline for brands that only focus, that overinvest, are over leveraged in the direct response portion of the funnel. So if that's the problem, how do we think about solving it? I think there are two kind of major themes here. Next slide. Whoosh.
The magic behind the curtain.
So two prongs here. We're going to spend today really talking about this second one, which has like the slime explosion on it, which is cool. That's when they let me design slides, you end up with slides that look like this. So sorry about that.
We're of the Nickelodeon generation. It's okay.
I don't know that our audience is, but we are. So two approaches here, diversify budget and ad formats. So, it doesn't make sense to only focus on that 5% of the market that is in market. You need to start thinking more holistically with a B2B flavor about brand formants, about the idea that, that these strategies are not mutually exclusive to one another. And ultimately, we see that often in, content-led ABM strategies where we've got, a really good target list that we are, we're getting, more discovery, higher funnel content in front of, and we're working to score them up and bring them into our performance pipeline. But that's one side of it. The other side of it is designing a better performance mousetrap. So for those people that do miraculously want to talk right now about what you're selling right now, those are gold. Right, those types of inquiries are gold, and if we just treat them as, you'll win some, you'll lose some. We'll bring some in, we'll bring others in. You can bet your ass that your competitors are not taking that same approach. So we have to really design for that, for that gold bucket of folks that are in market that we've attracted through our performance funnels. How do we build a better mousetrap to capture more value from them? Cece, talk a little bit about what that, what some of the dynamics of that mousetrap might entail.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing to think about, this relationship between lead volume and then ultimately kind of pipeline created, right? One would naturally think, and you alluded to this, that as more leads come in, more pipeline will be generated. One of the very key measures of success that I see Chili Piper customers evaluate when they're looking at, how am I actually, as a marketing operations or revenue operations professional, how am I impacting sales? Because ultimately we're both measured on the same output. It's got to be sales. And when I see, we have kind of two gates with our product, the opportunity to qualify in. So maybe you don't want every single person that hits your website to fill out a form to be able to self-schedule with your team. You talk about kind of capturing them in their moment of interest. Well, that ability to self-schedule is critical to capturing that intent. I mean, you can't get a higher signal of intent than I want to talk to somebody right now. And as the cost of these leads has increased, you just cannot afford to let any contact at one of your target accounts slip through the cracks, right? I mean, you just can't, whether they're in your CRM or they're not. But anyway, kind of back to this relationship between these two measures. And the measures I will use are qualification rate and then conversion rate. So in Chili Piper nomenclature, qualification rate is based on our rules. Is this somebody that you would like to be able to schedule a meeting with your team? If the answer to that is yes, they're qualified. If the answer to that is no, they're disqualified. I would much prefer to see somebody with an incredibly small qualification rate with a conversion rate, so a meeting booked rate in the 80%. Even if you only show the calendar to 10% of the people, you get 80% of that 10% that actually books a meeting with you. And the likelihood that that opportunity actually moves forward into funnel is, I mean, there's such a strong correlation there. Whereas the opposite is true of those folks that have, let's say, 100% qualification rate. And I do see clients employ this strategy because it makes sense for their business. But If you show every single person the option to schedule, you're hoping that those that are most inclined to book are actually going to take that action. So when we look across our thousands of clients, we see that inverse relationship really play out. The smaller your qualification number, i.e. the tighter your funnel, the more likely they are to book a meeting and therefore, kind of correlate down to pipeline. So it's that mousetrap in the middle that says, how do I get those folks that I really truly want to the right person in that exact moment? And no doubt the data bears that success out.
Cece, still you?
Yeah, I think when we move on to the kind of the next slide here, thinking about the cost of what it looks like to leave these opportunities on the table. My animations here, like you, Pat, I am not a graphics expert. So spoiler alert, let's just click through all these and have all these numbers come up, because I think, in practice and in principle, I think we're all aligned with what, we just kind of talked about in that inverse, but let's see how this actually like pencils out. So these are real numbers from a client of ours, a very large telecommunications company that many of you would recognize if I were to say their name. They came to us with the idea, the hypothesis that adding the opportunity to self-schedule from the website would have an impact on revenue. It's a pretty bold or broad, I'll say, hypothesis, but what we were able to find in a pretty narrow pilot in terms of, we went to one page on their massive.com, right? They have all these paid landing pages and campaign searches, and those are wonderful. But there was one page that they said, hey, we've got a really low conversion rate on this page. Let's just futz around with this and see what we can find, because the risk is not super high, right? So from this page, what they were seeing before Chili Piper was 9% meetings booked rate. We don't have the qualification rate to compare it against, of course, because they didn't have a technology like ours in place first. But they started at 9%. After 90 days, they saw that bookings rate increase to 35%, a 288% growth from where they started, right? 35%, in my view, we still got a lot to improve upon, but that's part of our long-standing relationship with them, is really getting that even higher. But more,
you're one of those people that are not satisfied until you're at 100%.
No, because I'm going, what's happening to the other 65%? Like, where are they going? Those are the people I want to talk to, right? But I think even more interesting on the closed one side of things. So if they're seeing 9% meetings booking and 4% closed one off of that, I actually think that for them, that might be a pretty tight measurement, right? But what they were able to actually do is drive that up to 14% with a 250% increase. Not large numbers, but increases, of course, massive when we're talking about each point that kind of, the logarithmic scale there. There we go. So let's quantify this into revenue and I'm assuming a $20,000 ACV. This is not even an astronomical ACV, but let's say you get 1,000 submissions on a page in a given month. 9% of those book a meeting, you end up with 90 meetings. At a closed one percentage of only 4, you got 3.5 deals, call it 4 at 20 grand. You're a little less than $100,000 in revenue impact that you can directly tie back to your site. Now you introduce the ability to self-schedule for only those leads that you actually want to talk to. Again, that qualification component and the technology to support that decision is critical. But now we've taken that same 1,000 submissions, and we're seeing 350 meetings booked. And at a 14% close rate, that's actually almost 50 deals at $20,000 is sub $1 million in revenue. So the results themselves compound over time in a big, big way, with small marked differences in, a couple extra meetings booked, a higher conversion rate here. I mean, this is real money. We're talking about real money here. And for our customer, maybe add a couple zeros onto that when we start thinking about average deal size. So yeah, there's real money to be found and not changing a whole lot.
It strikes me, Cece. So, everybody here has probably heard some version of, it's cheaper to keep a client than to acquire a new one, or, generally it's more efficient to upsell a client than acquire a new one. what people don't necessarily think about always is the same logic is true for someone that's already engaging with your material, right? So like maybe, yes, it's not a client yet, but you already have that person in the funnel. You can make these marginal improvements to their experience that drive really, really big, dramatic lift figures more easily in many cases than you can, go out and spin up a new acquisition channel, or, go spend, X amount more in channels. So I love this as an example. The leverage points are pretty compelling.
They for sure are. I admittedly was looking at a slightly different screen. If we could go back one slide, I do want to just kind of talk about this stat that Gartner put forth, because it is mind-boggling to me as somebody who goes and buys SaaS and is the assistant of people who buy SaaS. What Gartner is saying, or excuse me, Forrester. I have another stat from Gartner that I've mixed up here, but by 2025, so we're here, right? More than half of large B2B transactions, as categorized by $1 million or more, will be processed through digital self-serve channels. Wow. Think about your website experience. And this was something that you guys mentioned when we were writing that white paper, right? Go mystery shop your website. If you came to your own site ready to spend $1 million, what would that feel like for you as a buyer? What would that journey feel like? If you filled out a form that requested information or downloaded a white paper, like I hope you'll go do at the end of this and read into some of those insights that we've talked through today, how would that feel? And would you make that easy for them? Aside from generating the leads, let's not make it hard for them to spend money with us, right? Like that's the other side of this. So again, thinking about what those experiences are all along the journey, and making sure that they do come off as personalized. I have a little disclaimer that I send on almost all of my first touch emails to humans, because I find that we're also programmed to think that everything is automated, and I'm not truly getting a human to actually respond to me. And when somebody comes to fill out our form and they don't book a meeting, I actually get a notification of that, and I can go see who it was, what they filled out. That our RevOps team has done a great job of really closing the loop on any leads. So those 65% that don't book a meeting, I actually know who they are, and I can go follow up with them. But I always send a message back to them, say, hey, I noticed you filled out this form. I'd love to talk to you. Because if they're here filling out a form, they're talking to other people too. And if I don't respond within 5 minutes, or anybody doesn't respond within 5 minutes, you're at the end of the line already. But I always put a little disclaimer at the end that says, I'm actually sending you this email. This is not coming from a marketing automation system. And any other thing that I can do to include the fact that I am a human, which almost conversely dehumanizes the email in the first place. Sure. But I think it is so important to call out those human touches, despite the fact that they are technology driven. Again, through my experience in hospitality, I think that those two things have to be considered simultaneously.
It's a great segue if you want to go up to 10 now, Evan, to talk about sort of some of the drivers. So that's the end state, right? Which is that B2B buyers are expecting to buy without even needing to talk to people like CC and myself in many cases, which is astounding, right? This sector more than others has been resistant to self-service for a variety of reasons, whether it's pricing transparency or just the way that funnels have worked in B2B. But we are seeing these are some great stats. 81% of B2B buyers are doing most of their research before they ever talk to a sales rep. That's a 2024 demand gen report data point. According to Focus Vision, 13% of content they are reviewing in detail before they make a decision. We actually have some data. This is from Level's own data set, but 27 different touch points on average, digital touch points on average before converting. Those are things like ads, blog content, webinar, review sites, the socials, third-party validation. And more, they're expecting some level of personalization, whether it's, CC's extreme hospitality version of that, where it's, me saying, hey, I'm actually a real person, and here's me, singing a song to prove it. Or
I haven't done that yet. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
This webinar will conclude actually with karaoke. I hope no one minds. Whether or not it's that sort of truly human touch or a personalized programmatic approach, it has become the expectation. This wasn't the case 10 years ago, right? Some of us remember a time when it was because if you were just showing up in digital searches for product category or intent, like that was enough because your competitors weren't there. The landscape wasn't as cluttered in many cases. So you just had to show up and put a form in front of somebody and say, hey, talk to sales, and they would submit the form, and you call them when you call them, and you have a pretty good close rate on that. The funnel has changed dramatically. It's no longer a straight line, and it's become harder and harder to sort of keep the consumer, the buyer, at the center of that. But you have to have some strategies to adapt to make sure that happens.
The 27 touch points for me is just like such a mind-blowing number, because the place that my brain goes is I may be focusing all of these touch points successfully at the right persona that I've already identified. And then what happens if somebody else new gets hired and they haven't seen those 27 touch points or 26 touch points, right? That have led the internal conversation to then go to this other person. So I'm always so cautious of like the outliers and like, how do we capture the folks that we don't know exist? and that's where I think, you talk about kind of applying the right framework to a newly shifting funnel that now has an exponentially larger amount of personas in a buying group in order to make a decision in the first place. And one of the great things about, again, applying technology to some of these processes is that you can account for the outlier by simply ensuring that folks from the same domain go to the person in a sales organization that has that existing relationship. Or maybe you route different personas, again, from your target customers to different internal personas, whether it be an SDR, an AE, an AM. Are you needing to do, is this a customer that has a support challenge, right? I mean, I think about all of those cases for why somebody may engage with your digital content, but primarily for the purposes of like ensuring every single person within an organization has the exact same experience when they come to your content. I think that is really where you can use technology to ensure that happens successfully.
I think it's funny. You mentioned earlier the idea that that sort of smart routing might actually be a barrier to entry to somebody from even putting a scheduling opportunity on a thank you page. And I think hearing you talk through some of those use cases, I think the lesson is, for many, I have been around marketers, and they're like, well, there are these edge cases, there are these use cases, there's the person that left, and therefore I can't really solve for those, and I know that they matter to my stakeholders, so I'm just not going to really engage with this sort of product set as part of my stack because there are too many of these edge cases.
Yes,
there's a whole sort of intelligence and routing intelligence that has increasingly become accessible through tools like Chili Piper, that mean that really, if there are, you can engineer around those use cases much better than you were able to even a few years ago.
100%. And one of the biggest shifts that I have seen just in terms of kind of the evaluation for the decision to book a meeting is like 80% of our onboarding conversations with customers are like, how do you determine who gets to book a meeting and who doesn't? And it has shifted so dramatically away from subjective information and all into very quantitative info, like there are firmographic data points that we know now make a great lead and that are more likely to convert. And there are all kinds of data points that exist in a CRM or a marketing automation system that a technology like Chili Piper, like you said, can key into and make sure are respected. And if they need to be changed, they get changed in one place and are able to kind of go all out to to every demand kind of conversion entry point that you have on your site or other digital assets, whether it be chat or in your app or whatever that may be. But, you know, I love saying, like, if the data exists, we can use it. So if you've got the data, we can make any routing combination possible. And, you know, like you said, the advancements in those capabilities have come so far in the last few years, as have the pictures of the personas themselves that funnel into these leads. You know, I think about the mention of like executive Emily and sales enablement Sam and marketing Molly, right? Like those people have changed and we have to find ways to say, like, there are 10,000 marketing Mollys. What do they look like? Who are they? And how do we capture Molly's coworker too when he or she comes into the funnel?
Totally. And that's a spoiler alert. We're going to talk a little bit about segmentation and how it's changing in our AI-enabled future. Before we do that, super quick, Joseph asking about sources. So really quickly, self-educated buyer section, that's coming from the 2024 Demand Gen report, B2B buyers survey, and Focus Vision and Demand Gen report. The nonlinear journey section, that is from our own primary research and the white paper. Expectation of personalization. The first data point is from Salesforce. The second is from McKinsey. And the static funnels fail is also from our primary research. So hopefully that is helpful. Good question. Joseph wants the receipts. I love it.
Trust but verify.
Oh, yeah. All right. So if that is the current state, and it's a chaotic state, it is a nonlinear state, what do we as marketers have to aspire to? And I think the idea, you know, the best way to encapsulate this, I did a presentation at Google's New York headquarters 2 weeks ago. I threw up a slide. I should have put it in here. I didn't. Sorry. It was a from to slide, and it's the idea of where marketers are going from growth hackers to systems orchestrators. And this idea of orchestration, I think, is really more critical than ever because it is such a nonlinear journey. We have to have a really thoughtfully orchestrated content strategy, advertising strategy, sales outreach strategy. Increasingly, you know, we want to bring concepts from ABM into all elements, even of our inbound, as we think about sort of what we're looking for as far as intent signals throughout inbound. And we want to use AI in some really smart ways to make that possible, because it's not really possible to do the level of segmentation that Cece was talking about at scale anymore effectively, just because the tool set has evolved past it, right? It used to be, you know, you create your personas, right? Maybe you got 6 personas across, 10 different end markets or 6 different end markets or whatever it is. And, you would create sort of dedicated, focused campaigns around each of those. If you're doing that today, you're doing it wrong, because although that is the best thing to do from a message personalization or segment personalization perspective, it actually is working against the AI that these acquisition platforms like Google, like LinkedIn, like Meta have built. So what we try to do is we try to create some tools for our partners to be able to orchestrate effectively, and we do that as your agency across our clients. If you go to the next slide. So some of that is in the white paper, and I suggest that you check it out. But I'm going to just give you a preview of some of the idea here. So one of the big ideas is the signal clarity and the structure design. The structure design I actually just talked about, right? It's no longer you want your structures, your ad structures, to be bigger, because you want the AI to be able to identify who the right buyers are based on what you're telling them what right buyers look like. To do that, you need to tell the AI and tell the platforms that where you're doing acquisition work what success looks like. And I'd be willing to bet that many of you are still, because it's the best practice and it's well-established practice, you're using conversion points, just pure lead conversions as one of the main signals for automation of platforms. We have a whole set of strategies around offline conversions, value-based bidding, and even like web qualification, where let's take the Chili Piper example, where we've got a form submission and then we've got a meeting schedule experience. Without getting into the CRM data at all, without doing anything special or deep, if you move the conversion point from after the form submission, which is where in most cases it is today, if you move that conversion pixel to after the meeting schedule, you have just, congratulations, you have just trained your algorithm on the right data, or the next step down the funnel on the right data. And we know that, like, it makes so much sense conversationally, but we're still not moving those conversion points that we're optimizing against consistently. That's one of the biggest unlocks that we see for B2B B2B marketers, doing that, and then recognizing that you don't need infinite volume of conversions to be able to do that effectively. Like, you can model it out. You can do like predictive models, predictive lead scoring that says, you're not just optimizing towards close won deals, you're optimizing towards high propensity for close won deals, whether it's a modeled thing or it's something as simple as moving that conversion point to behind the scheduling rather than behind the lead form. So some of the other features that we talk about in the funnel, so we talked about behavioral scoring briefly, making sure that you are orchestrating, you have visibility into where where all those activations are happening, making sure they're being pulled into the CRM, making sure there's connectivity, first party data connectivity, privacy safe first party data connectivity between CRM and ad platforms, creating automated cycles that create that quick speed to lead, and augment the personal outreach that you're hearing from CC, that sort of human point, and then creating really, really, really smooth handoff points. So making it really clear to a buyer, hey, you've hit. It's obvious that you're interested. We're gonna put you in contact with CC or with whomever. Making those handoffs super frictionless and super evident. And teams that use AI to do this are seeing significantly better conversion rates across the board, because they are building a better mousetrap for the portion of the funnel where they've got the highest engagement.
Yeah. Pat, hearing you say specifically on that last point there, right? The frictionless handoff from marketing to sales. I love that your perspective on that just now was, what is the buyer's experience of that handoff? We, I think, so much charge our revenue operations teams and our marketing operations teams with building a system internally that works, right? But again, kind of echoing back to the shop your own website, but what is that feeling like externally? Nothing feels weirder as somebody who's going to fill out a form where the CTA all over the page is, get more information, get more information, get more information. And then you click on something and you get this pop-up that's like, great, thanks, somebody will be in touch with you. And it's like, no, I just wanted more information, right? Like the misaligned CTA with what the actual kind of journey is. Conversely, if you're just filling out a form to get more information, maybe there's something, this is one of my favorite experiences actually. Short form, first of all, because we have every bit of information we need to know about you based on your email. There's no reason I should ask you for anything that I can go get myself. I know who you work for. I know what your company size is, right? You can get a very short form. So let's say you've started kind of with that. Maybe you bifurcate the journey to say, if this is a customer that isn't kind of part of our ideal TAM or something like that, they get redirected to a page that says, hey, thanks. If you're still interested in talking with us, here's a link or a calendar of somebody who can give you more information. And that quite literally is a team that can be there to help support that. But let's say this person fills out, the form, and their email address sends a flag that says, this is somebody we want to talk to. even if our CTA on that page wasn't schedule a call, get on a demo, whatever that like next touch point may be, what if the pop-up said, we think your company, insert name here, dynamic tag, right? In a pop-up, we think Level Agency would be a great fit for Chili Piper. CC is available to talk with you now. Do you want to talk? And there is a prompt that says, yeah, I'd love to book some time. Maybe we launch a live phone call directly from that site. But I was in this process of, I'm just trying to get more information, but I've now been served this experience that says like, hey, we know who you are and we know what you do. And we really do want to talk to you. Do you want to talk to us too? And you kind of open that permission give permission for that experience to kind of happen. I just think it's a really unexpected pattern, particularly again, when the CTAs and the forms themselves and then the outputs can sometimes feel a little misaligned.
I think that's very insightful, CC. And I think it goes back to the point around self-service. I'm president, my agency, I get calls all the time from salespeople. And if I'm not expecting, it doesn't even necessarily matter if it is within that first 5 minutes of like downloading the Salesforce white paper or something like that. I get a call, I'm doing 18 different things. I get a call. I take it because I recognize the area code, but not the number. My first question is this a sales call? If it's a sales call and I didn't ask for it, I say, please add me to the do not call list, please. Have a great day. And I hang up. And I'm sure I am not unique in that model. It's just, we're in such a fragmented attention world where there's so many people that are vying for our attention as buyers that we have to make it easy and we have to put the buyer in control. And the way that we do that is we're really clear about handoffs. We technology enable those handoffs. And that's ultimately part of the key to success here.
Yeah. And I think too, I heard somebody say once, or it was an old Mary Kay quote, right? Like everybody walks around with a sign on their neck that says, make me feel important. Think about how you can affect an emotional reaction out of your prospect by giving them that level of personalized experience when they weren't expecting it. I have an old friend. He is a lawyer and a fishing guide, splits his time between the Keys in Florida and Montana. And when I was working at a hotel, he would always have me send his packages for him. And he always would tell me, send them UPS. And I'm like, Chuck, what? FedEx is cheaper. Like you're sending, hundreds of pounds. He goes, no, send them UPS. And I'm like, okay, why? He goes, UPS washes their trucks. And if they're going to take enough care to wash their truck, imagine what they're going to do with my packages. And like that metaphor has stuck with me for, decades now at this point, because it is when all things in SaaS, especially, are starting to look and feel very similar. And the products themselves are all starting to kind of, vibe alike. What can be the differentiator is that emotional experience that somebody had interacting with you digitally along the way before you as a human even had a chance to talk to them. So like, again, kind of thinking about what it would feel like to go through that buying journey on your own site is, I think, probably the best first reflective step that I would suggest any marketer do, because it may have been a while since you've done that end to end. And you might be surprised, but yeah, the UPS thing, I'm like, that's true. FedEx trucks are always dirty. I don't know why.
My key takeaway today: wash your digital trucks. I like that.
But seriously, with all other things being equal, where is your differentiator? And if it is making it hard to get in touch with somebody, if it is asking them to resubmit information that you've asked of them 3 times because they've been to your page 3 different times and they've interacted with 3 different digital agents, a chat, a form, and then, they've responded to an email, right? Or clicked on a link on an email. We have enough technology to help inform all of that incredible personal journey. And if we don't act on it, you talk about hospitality. Nothing looks worse than being like, I told you it was my anniversary and you've given me a birthday cake. That experience at dinner. It's the same in the world of SaaS, I think, and B2B marketing in general.
Thanks, CC. All right, next slide, Evan. So talk to us a little bit about, some of the more, we've talked a lot about machine learning. We've talked about the implications of AI marketing systems and what you need to do to signal and structure to work well with those and to orchestrate those effectively. What are some of the other things that we should be thinking about from a leveraging AI in these processes perspective?
Yeah. AI is about getting the right information to the right team immediately, right? I mean, I don't think we have even the sake of saying like quickly anymore, because immediately almost feels necessary. Our CEO and co-founder Alina, she and I were in San Francisco a few weeks ago, and I heard her speak, and she said, I think it was something around like 83 to 87, I can't remember the exact number that she gave, % of the leads that come inbound at Chili Piper, we never have a cold lead, is basically the TLDR of hers. She says, because our team has touched them in some way, in some capacity. And as somebody who sits on the other end of the marketing effort, right? I'm more on the sales side of things. Like, I am shocked at how much our team has done to make that engagement with me happen in the first place. And so it's about giving visibility both internally and externally, I think, to what that journey has been. Internally, we have a fun little channel in our Slack called Automate Everything. And truly that is a goal at Chili Piper, is to automate absolutely as much as we possibly can of our own internal processes. Because the faster I am at getting information that I need to bring to a conversation, the better equipped I can be actually on that call. I have a goal with every single call. Like, I can't show up looking like an asshole. You've given me all the information that I need to make this a successful conversation. Like, I now have a responsibility to actually act on it. But companies have a responsibility to make sure that that information can be surfaced and a narrative about that information can be presented internally as well, right? So that we know kind of contextually how to act on it. And it requires kind of organizing all of these different components that you see here on the screen, right? It's got to be about data management. We have to have different strategies so that when a particular kind of lead hits a page on our site, that there is some playbook that's there automatically to go and support them, whether it's, sending them additional content based on the page that they're on. One more recently that we've implemented that I love is through our chat, through Chili Chat. If somebody has filled out a form with us in the past and not booked a meeting, we actually surface a chat that says, hey, you've talked to us before, but you never booked with us. Why is that, right? And we kind of call it out directly in that chat, because why wouldn't we? And again, it's humanizing with AI, but it is real and actual information that we can use it to make a personal experience. And again, all of this, every time we have a call with somebody, it's run through an AI to kind of put out a like call summary for us, right? And that actually goes, this is super cool. I love that everybody used to be growth hackers, and that's basically who Bodycon is here at Chili Piper. But at the end of a call, it's not just the sales team that gets a recap of the call. If any competitor is mentioned, if any particular page on our site is mentioned, if a webinar is mentioned, like anything that could contextually inform a marketing decision, or our marketing team to make a different decision, I guess I'll say, that gets extrapolated from the call and sent directly to our marketing team. Hey, this is a snippet about product market fit that maybe you haven't heard before, or hey, this customer found great success doing XYZ. Oh my gosh. And so we have all these systems that are now feeding the teams that particularly in remote and digital, teams wouldn't have visibility into. Like, at the end of a great discovery call, somebody in marketing is getting an update. Somebody obviously in sales, our CEOs are getting information about it, all fed by these AI agents that are coming in and then regenerating all of that content kind of internally to make better informed decisions. The product marketing updates, I think, are one of my favorite automations that we've put in place, because I've seen our marketing team change content based on the information that they're hearing in calls that they would have otherwise relied on reps to self-report.
Yeah, I think it's great, Cece. And I think, you're illustrating something that, I mentioned the Google Summit that we did a couple of weeks ago. We had the chief business strategy officer for Google, Gopi Kallio there. And, the shift that he was encouraging is, don't think of your AI strategy. It's no longer about having an AI strategy. It's about having a strategy X, which is enabled by AI. And you've
Absolutely.
heard strategy for conversion optimization and a strategy for meeting pipeline optimization, and now a strategy for product marketing knowledge, influence supported by AI rather than a separate AI strategy on these things. So thank you for the detour on that. Let's go to big predictions, bold predictions. I'm sorry, my mistake. Cece, was there anything that you wanted to call out on this? My mistake.
No, I think, the reality is, and this is a stat that we've talked about that's been recycled, and mentioned, if you're not there in 5 minutes, you're behind the game, right? So like, what can you do in those true moments of interest to enable technology to kind of have those, or to convert? And I love your much more practical than I, because I am not a marketer by practice. I mean, but like the idea of moving that pixel, like how do you technically do that to track conversion at a different rate? Like, I'm all ears to stuff like that. I think that's super cool. But yeah, I think we've talked about a lot of this already, just in the way the conversation's evolved.
Well, let's take this home to bold predictions. I'll start. My bold prediction is that by, let's say, middle of 2026, so we'll give ourselves a little bit over a year to say this, there will be more cutting edge B2B advertisers and sites that don't have a contact us form anywhere on the site than there are that do.
I am here for that prediction.
That's what's happening. You mentioned it, in the incredible amount of information that we already have about all of the buyers, and I think the dramatic explosion. That's a good word.
I like that. It's on point.
Of progressive profiling in CRM and tools like Chili Piper, and tools like the ABM stack have all started to really coalesce around a formless future. And I think that's going to be here sooner than we think.
Yeah. And no doubt that formless future is as hot as like chatbots conversation was, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. It's going to be a big one and people are going to get really uncomfortable with it, but I think it's here.
What's your prediction, Cece?
My bold prediction would be that the companies that are really going to be winning are coming to every conversation with experience in mind. And that may not be, well, let me say that differently. I don't think you have a choice anymore, right? Like there used to be kind of this like, well, I have this website, I have a form, it's on par with what everybody else is doing, right? And aligned with your prediction that forms are going to kind of go away. But that's across the entire buyer journey, from the time that, we think about the bow tie of the funnel, right? Like we haven't even talked about the other side, the other funnel, the customer marketing funnel, right? And how you continue to drive revenue there. Anybody who can master a seamless digital experience across that entire bow tie, like game changers.
I love it. The bow tie model is powerful. Good call out to that. If you're not familiar, check it out.
Yeah.
All right, so let's wrap. We've got 7 minutes here. Sorry, Cece and I, we get excited and we start to gab with each other, and we're like, yeah, we'll talk for 40 minutes, and then we'll have tons of time for questions. But we're just nerdy and excited about this stuff. What are your questions? What are your bold predictions? Throw them in the chat, or Evan, I don't know if you can bring people on stage if they're interested in joining to ask anything live. I should know whether that's possible before I ask. What questions do you have? Or bold predictions? So while you're figuring that, I have one here that I got. Let me pull this up. Where'd it go? Oh my gosh.
I think I saw one come in earlier that I'd love to speak to. What advice do you have for companies with less mature CRM data? Right? Because I said earlier, if you have the data, we can do something with it. This, I feel like, is one of those moments where, whether you're a virtual team or an in-person or a hybrid team, like, this is where you get all the players in a room and you figure out what's broken. Like, you just have to do it. And it's going to be a one day. You get sales ops, marketing ops, whoever your agency's involved in supporting those technologies, and you put it on paper, and you have to address it like outright. And it needs to happen, I think, in kind of one fell swoop, because if you're looking at, oh, in this workflow, this data doesn't really make sense, but in this workflow, maybe this data is what we want to leverage. But wait a minute, those two things are not being updated, even though they're important to each other, right? Like, those conversations have to happen, I think, in context together. So like, get in a room, it's a boots on the ground. Maybe you got to burn it and rebuild it. But like, whether it's Chili Piper or any other system, if you do not have good data, you cannot action any of the AI information or systems that we've kind of been talking about. It just functionally probably won't work for you. You'll be disqualified from every sales conversation, for vendors that you're seeking. So yeah, I would just say, get in a room, whiteboard, talk about it, and really battle plan, because it is critical. You have to have everybody on board with what a healthy CRM looks like.
And I would say just one other thing, because this is another thing that happens, and then I'll answer the great form questions. Maybe you could throw Elizabeth's version of that up on the screen, Evan. But CC, I think that you need data. You need good data. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to fix your entire data schema. It doesn't all have to be cleaned and perfect before you start down these journeys.
Yeah.
And actually, the AI tools are sort of revolutionizing some of the ways that data can be ETL'd and consumed. So don't be afraid if your data is not clean, is not good. As long as you've got a lot of it, there's ways to work with it. But obviously, the journey has to be, hey, we're cleaning, we're making progress on this over time. All right, the last question that we had, a couple great questions. Juan and Elizabeth, thank you both for asking about sort of to unpack the Formless website example. So what this will probably look like is, you go to the Chili Piper website, and that website will say, maybe not welcome Elizabeth, but they'll know what company that you're from. And, they will serve you content that is specific to what they know about your company and what your company has been engaged with. And, they might say, welcome client X. Here's, we saw that you engage with this type of content. Here's something that would be additionally valuable. And by the way, would you like to, would you want to schedule a time to talk to CC about some real practical strategies? You'll say yes, you'll click that. It'll confirm, it'll give you the option to, to schedule yourself. So no form in any of that. Or even if there is a form, so much of the data on you as the buyer is out there in the ecosystem already. A lot of it will be just sort of confirming, yeah, that's the right email address, that's the right phone number, or let me change that and give you a different number to reach. But it's much less, it'll be much more about information validation than it is about primary information collection. All right. I think we are at time. Ish. Nobody ever got mad at a meeting ending 2 minutes early, so let's take our own advice. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate the discussion, the engagement. CC, this was a lot of fun. Let's do it again soon. Thank you all for spending your some time with us today.
Thanks all.